Most people who worry too much don't actually know they're doing it. That's the part nobody talks about. They think they're being responsible. They think they're being careful. They think the constant low hum of concern running through their day is just what it means to be a thoughtful person, a good parent, a reliable employee, a decent human being. And because it feels like responsibility, they never question it. They never stop and ask, wait, is this actually helping me? Or have I just been so deep inside this pattern for so long that I stopped noticing it was a pattern at all? Here's what I know. The people who learn to break free from chronic worry, and they do exist, they're real people, not some idealized version of calm that only lives in books. The thing they all describe when they look back is not that they fixed some big dramatic problem. It's that they finally saw something they had been walking past every day without recognizing it, something obvious in hindsight, something that changes the moment you can actually see it clearly. I'm going to show you what that is today, not at the end, right here as we go, because you've spent enough time building up to answers that leave you where you started. So we're going to move through this together, and by the time this is done, something is going to be different. Not everything, but something real. Let's start with the thing you probably haven't fully admitted to yourself yet. The worry is not about the things you think it's about. Read that again. The worry is not about the things you think it's about. You think you're worried about your finances, your relationship, your health, your future, your kids, your job, the decision you made last Tuesday that you're still not sure was the right one. And yes, those things are real. Yes, those are genuine parts of your life that deserve attention. But the worry, that specific kind of constant, circling, never quite resolved worry that follows you from morning to night, that is not a rational response to those things. That is a habit. A deeply ingrained, completely automatic habit that got attached to those things because habits need something to run on. And worry, when it becomes a habit, will find something to attach itself to no matter what. You solve one problem, the worry moves to the next one. You resolve one uncertainty, the worry finds another. You get through the hard season, and instead of resting, your mind starts scanning for what might go wrong in the next one. That is not problem solving. That is a nervous system that forgot how to be still. And here's where the first real shift lives, right here at the beginning, because you deserve to have it now, and not at the end. The moment you stop treating the worry as information about the world and start treating it as information about your nervous system, everything begins to look different. Not easier, not instantly calmer, but different, because now you're looking at the right thing. But I need to back up, because understanding how you got here matters. Not to assign blame, not to dig through your past like it's a crime scene, but because the pattern makes a certain kind of painful sense when you trace it back to where it started. And when things make sense, they lose a little of their power over you. Nobody is born a worrier. That's the first thing. Children are not born in a state of chronic anxiety about the future. Watch a young child for even 10 minutes, and you'll see someone who is completely, almost aggressively, in the present moment. The idea of planning for next week, of dreading next month, of lying awake at night running through scenarios, that is completely foreign to a young mind. It's learned, it's taught, sometimes directly, sometimes by environment, sometimes just by experience. Maybe you grew up in a house where worry was the dominant language, where the adults around you were always bracing for something, where love and fear lived close together, where preparation for the worst felt like the most responsible thing you could do. And you absorbed that. Not because you chose to, but because children absorb what they're surrounded by. The emotional climate of your early life becomes your emotional default. The way the adults around you responded to uncertainty becomes the way you respond to uncertainty. Or maybe it wasn't the home. Maybe it was an experience, a period of genuine instability, real loss, actual unpredictability that trained your system to stay alert. Because when unpredictability is real, Staying alert is survival. When you genuinely don't know if things are going to be okay, your brain learns to keep watching. And that's not weakness, that was wisdom at the time. That was your mind doing exactly what minds are supposed to do. It learned from the environment and it adjusted. The problem is that environments change and nervous systems don't automatically get the update. So you moved out of the instability, or you grew up, or the crisis passed, and your nervous system kept running the old software, kept watching, kept bracing, kept worrying, not because the danger was still there, but because the pattern had already written itself in deep enough that it no longer needed the original reason to keep going. That's how worry becomes a habit. That's how something that was once adaptive, once useful, once a genuine response to genuine difficulty, becomes the filter through which you see everything long after the original threat is gone. And now here's something that will probably land with some weight if you really let it in. The worry feels like it's protecting you. That's the trick. That's the reason it's so hard to let go of, the reason you keep going back to it even when you know it's not helping. Because somewhere, underneath the exhaustion of it, underneath the part of you that knows the constant thinking is costing you more than it's giving, somewhere in there is a belief, quiet and stubborn and very old, that says, if I stop worrying, something bad will happen. That says, my worry is the thing standing between me and disaster. That says, the moment I relax is the moment everything falls apart. You probably recognize that. You've probably had the experience of finally letting yourself feel okay about something, finally allowing a moment of genuine relief, and then almost immediately feeling guilty for it, like you spoke too soon, like you jinxed it, like something in you rushed back to worry, because being okay felt too fragile, too exposed, too much like asking for something to go wrong. That is not you being irrational. That is a deeply conditioned pattern, doing exactly what it was designed to do, pull you back to vigilance the moment you start to drift away from it. Because for a nervous system that has been in high alert for a long time, calm doesn't feel like safety. Calm feels like the quiet before something bad happens. That's one of the most counterintuitive and painful parts of this whole thing. The thing you need most, rest, ease, quiet, is the thing your system has learned to distrust. So you stay in the worry not because you want to be there, but because some part of you believes you have to be there, that leaving it would be reckless, that peace is a luxury you haven't earned yet, or a trap you can't afford to fall into. Now, I want to talk about what this actually costs you day to day. Not in abstract terms, in the specific, ordinary, invisible ways that worry as a habit drains your life without making dramatic announcements about it. It costs you your mornings. Because the worry is there before you're fully awake, coloring the first moments of your day before you've even decided what kind of day you want to have. You open your eyes, and instead of a few seconds of neutral presence, your mind is already mid-sentence in a conversation with a problem. It costs you the good moments, not by making them disappear, the good moments still come, but by putting a ceiling on how fully you can inhabit them. You're at dinner with someone you love, and part of your mind is elsewhere. You're in a moment that should feel light, and your body is still slightly braced. You're watching something beautiful, and there's a quiet hum in the background that won't completely switch off. You're happy, but you're slightly watching the happiness from a distance, instead of living inside it. It costs you your relationships, because people who love you get a version of you that is partially somewhere else. Partially in the future you're dreading, partially in the past you're still processing. Your attention is divided in ways that are invisible but felt. And over time, the distance that worry creates between you and your own life creates distance between you and the people in it. It costs you your body. The physical toll of chronic low-level anxiety is not dramatic. It doesn't usually show up as one big symptom. It shows up as tightness in the chest that you've stopped noticing because it's just always there. as tension in the jaw, the shoulders, the back of the neck, as sleep that doesn't fully restore you, as a kind of tiredness that has no clear cause because the cause isn't visible. It's a nervous system running on high for years with no real break, and it costs you your sense of self, because when worry is your baseline, you lose track of who you are underneath it. The things you genuinely want, the ways you naturally feel when you're not managing anxiety, the version of you that exists when the noise is low, that person becomes harder to find, not gone, but buried. Quiet in a way that starts to feel permanent, even though it isn't. So what do you actually do? Because I told you at the start that I wasn't going to make you wait for the answer. And I meant it, not the whole answer. Because there isn't one single answer, there is a direction, and I'm going to give you that direction clearly. The direction is this. You stop trying to fix the worry with more thinking, and you start interrupting the habit at the level where habits actually live, in the body, in the automatic response, in the space between the trigger and the reaction. Here's what that means practically. Right now, the sequence goes like this. Something uncertain happens, or your mind generates an uncertain thought, and before you are even conscious of having made a choice, you are already inside the worry, already spinning, already running through scenarios. The whole thing happens so fast it feels involuntary, because at this point, it basically is. The habit runs faster than your conscious decision to engage with it. The interruption doesn't happen by thinking better thoughts. That's not early enough in the sequence. By the time you're trying to replace a worried thought with a calmer one, the anxious response is already fully running. The interruption has to happen before the thought fully takes over. In the 2 or 3 seconds after the trigger and before the spiral locks in, and what lives in those 2 or 3 seconds is your breath. I know. You've heard the breathing thing before, and it felt like the world's most unsatisfying answer to a real and complicated problem. But I'm not talking about breathing as relaxation. I'm talking about breathing as a circuit breaker, as a way to physically interrupt the sequence before it runs to completion. One slow, deliberate breath, not because it's calming, not because it feels good in the moment, but because it introduces a pause. And a pause is all you need to create the tiny bit of space where a choice can live, where you can ask, for just a second, is this a real problem right now in this moment? Or is this the habit? Most of the time, if you can get to that question, the answer is the habit. Most of the time, in the actual present moment, you are not in danger. You are in discomfort. And discomfort and danger feel the same to a nervous system that's been running this pattern for years, but they are not the same. And every time you interrupt the sequence long enough to tell the difference, you are beginning to retrain the pattern. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, everything. Because habits don't break all at once. They break in moments. Repeated moments over time that gradually create a new default. You are building a new normal. And it starts with the pause. But there's a layer to this that the breathing alone doesn't reach. And I want to go there because I think it's the part that finally makes people feel understood rather than just instructed. Habitual worry, the kind that runs quietly in the background of your whole life, is almost always carrying something specific underneath it. It's not just a nervous system running on its own. It's a nervous system running in service of a belief so old and so buried that you may have never looked at it directly. A belief that says something like, I am only safe when I'm prepared for the worst, or things only stay good when I am vigilant, or the bad thing that happened before will happen again if I let my guard down. These aren't rational propositions you chose to adopt. They are conclusions your nervous system drew from experiences that were real and sometimes genuinely hard. And they made sense in context. But they've been running without context for a very long time. They've been running as if the original experience is still happening, still threatening, still requiring the same level of defense. And the way you find that belief, the specific one that's been running your worry, is not complicated, but it requires a kind of honesty that can be uncomfortable. The next time you notice yourself in a worry spiral, instead of trying to stop it or solve it, ask it a question. Ask, what am I actually afraid would happen? Not the surface answer, not I'm afraid the project will fail, or I'm afraid they'll be angry with me, but the answer underneath that. What would it mean? What does that failure or that anger say about you, about your life, about whether you are safe or loved or okay? Keep asking until you get to the one that feels slightly too honest, slightly too raw, the one that makes you want to change the subject, because that's the one. That's the belief the worry is protecting. And once you can see it, once it has a shape and a name, and you can look at it directly, it becomes something you can actually work with. Something you can question, something you can hold up against your actual experience and ask, is this really true? Is the evidence for this belief as strong as the belief feels? Most of the time, the evidence is old. The belief was formed in a moment of pain and never updated. The world inside your head is still running a story from years ago, and your nervous system is living in that story every day, worrying about threats that belong to a version of your life that no longer exists. There's also something I want to say about the people in your life, because worry as a habit doesn't just affect you in isolation. It shapes how you show up for everyone around you. People who carry chronic worry often worry about other people too, and this can look like love and often is love, but it can also quietly cross a line into control. When you worry about someone you care about, part of what's happening is that you are trying to manage your own anxiety by managing their situation, by solving their problems before they become problems, by thinking ahead on their behalf, by anticipating their pain and trying to prevent it, not entirely because you want what's best for them, but because their suffering activates your own fear, and your system needs to do something with that. And the people on the receiving end of that kind of worry feel it. They feel the heaviness of being someone else's anxiety project, even if that's not how you intend it. They feel the subtle pressure of someone always preparing for things to go wrong. And sometimes they pull back, not because they don't love you, but because love and worry feel different, and they need the distinction even if they can't name it. This isn't a reason to feel guilty. Please don't take this as another thing to worry about. I'm naming it because it matters, and because one of the things that changes when you loosen your grip on the worry habit is that your relationships often breathe easier. The people you love feel more trusted, more capable, more like they're being seen as they are, rather than as potential problems to be solved, and you get to be more present with them, less managing, and more genuinely there. That's not a small thing. That's actually one of the most profound changes people describe when they start to step out of the worry pattern. Not the inner quiet, though that's real, but the way their relationships change when they stop bringing the anxiety of preparation into every interaction. Let me talk about something else that keeps the worry habit locked in place, because I think this one goes unaddressed more than almost any other part of this. Most habitual worriers have a complicated relationship with being okay, not with wanting to be okay, everyone wants that, but with actually allowing themselves to be okay right now, in the present, before everything is resolved. Because the worry has become so tied to responsibility, to being a good person, to caring about the right things, that letting it go even temporarily feels like it means something about your character. If you stop worrying about your finances, does that mean you don't care? If you stop mentally rehearsing difficult conversations, does that mean you're not taking your relationship seriously? If you let yourself rest without scanning for what might go wrong, does that mean you're being naive, careless, irresponsible? This is the worry's most effective argument. And it's the one most people have never examined because it sounds so reasonable on the surface. Caring and worrying feel the same. Responsibility and anxiety feel like the same thing. But they're not. Caring about something doesn't require suffering in advance of it. Loving someone doesn't require anticipating every way you might lose them. Being responsible doesn't mean running every possible scenario in which things go wrong. You can be thoughtful and attentive and engaged with your life without the constant background hum of what might happen. You can take things seriously without carrying them as if the weight is the proof that you care. Worry is not love. Worry is fear wearing the mask of love. And the moment you can start to separate those two things, to see that you can be a deeply caring, conscientious, attentive person without the chronic anxiety, the grip of the habit begins to loosen in a very specific way, because it can no longer claim virtue as its reason to stay. Now, I want to come back to something practical, because the direction I gave you earlier, the pause, the breath, the question, is real and it works. But I want to add to it, because there are other small things that matter. One of them is learning to distinguish between productive concern and habitual worry. They look similar from the inside, but they feel different, and they lead to completely different places. Productive concern has an object. It's about a specific thing. It moves toward a specific action. And when the action has been taken, or when it's clear no action is possible right now, it releases. You realize you forgot to send an email, you feel a shot of concern, you send the email or note it for tomorrow, and the concern dissolves. That's healthy. That's a mind working well. Habitual worry also feels like it has an object, but when you look closely, the object keeps shifting. You solve the email problem, and the worry moves immediately to the next thing, or it goes back to the email and finds a new angle to be concerned about, or it decides the email problem points to a larger pattern of forgetting things, which means maybe you're not handling things well, which means maybe your overall capacity is declining, which means maybe, and you're gone. You've left the email entirely and you're somewhere else, running a different story, one that has no clear endpoint and no available action because it was never really about the email. When you notice that the worry has lost its specific object, when it's become ambient and circular, when you can't find a clear action that would actually address it, that's the signal, that's the habit running, and that's the moment to interrupt, not by solving it, but by naming it, literally if you can. In your own mind, or out loud if you're alone, this is the worry habit. There's nothing here for me to solve right now. And then gently redirecting your attention to something in the present moment that is real and sensory and actually in front of you. Not because thinking about the present makes everything better, but because the worry can only run in abstract space, in the imagined future, the reconstructed past. And the present moment is the one place it genuinely cannot follow you. The present moment is always safe from the habit if you can get there, even just for 30 seconds. There's one more thing I want to say about the habit specifically, and it's this. Habits are not broken by wanting to break them. You already know that, because you've wanted to stop worrying many times, and the wanting wasn't enough. Habits are broken by replacing them with something else, because the habit isn't just filling time, it's filling a need. It's giving your nervous system something to do, and if you take it away without offering anything in its place, the system just goes back to what it knows. So the replacement isn't emptiness. The replacement is presence, and presence is not passive. It's something you actively practice. It's the practice of returning again and again to what is actually in front of you, not with force, not with performance, but with genuine curiosity. What do I actually notice right now? What do I actually feel in my body in this moment? What is actually happening around me that I can engage with fully, not as a distraction but as an anchor? This sounds almost too simple, I know. Your mind is probably already objecting, saying that this can't possibly be enough to address the depth and the weight and the years of this pattern. And that objection is understandable, but the simplicity is the point. The habit is complex. The antidote is simple, not easy, simple. And simple repeated over time is more powerful than complex done once. Every time you return to the present, instead of following the worry into the future, you are doing the thing. You are practicing the skill. You are building the muscle. And slowly, over weeks and months, not days, not in one big revelation, the default begins to shift. The worry gets quieter, not because the world got safer, but because your nervous system got the message that you are here, that you can be trusted, that it doesn't have to keep running the alarm when there's no fire. I want to close with something that I think you need to hear, and that the worry habit has probably been arguing against for a very long time. You are allowed to be okay right now, not when you've solved everything, not when you've prepared for every possible scenario, not when the uncertain things in your life have been made certain. Right now as you are, with everything unresolved and everything unknown and everything still in motion, you are allowed to be okay. That sentence might feel almost offensive to read if the worry has been running long enough. It might feel irresponsible or naive or simply untrue given what's actually happening in your life. But I want you to notice that reaction, because the reaction itself is the habit. The immediate sense that you don't have permission to be okay yet. That's not wisdom. That's the pattern protecting itself. Because the truth is, being okay doesn't mean everything is solved. It means you trust yourself to handle what comes as it comes, instead of needing to carry it all before it arrives. It means you are willing to be present for your own life. Even the uncertain parts, even the unresolved parts, even the parts that are quietly hard in ways you can't fully explain yet. The worry tried to give you safety by keeping you one step ahead of everything. But life doesn't actually work that way, and some part of you has always known it. The most solid thing you can stand on isn't preparation. It's the belief, built slowly through your own experience, that you have handled hard things before and you will handle them again. And the handling doesn't require you to suffer through them twice by living them first in your imagination. You've been worrying for a long time. Maybe you've been doing it for so long that you genuinely can't imagine what it would feel like not to. But the habit wasn't always there. Before the pattern solidified, there was a version of you that moved through the day without the constant background noise. That version isn't a stranger to you. It's the part of you that has been waiting quietly underneath the noise for a long time, for exactly this moment. The moment when you finally see the habit clearly enough to stop mistaking it for who you are. The worry became your normal, because it happened every day, without interruption, until it felt like the only way. But you're here now, and here is where something different begins.